The fluorescent hospital lights had been her companion for 6 long days, but Simone Crawford was finally free. The doctors said she was healing remarkably well from her emergency appendectomy, well enough to go home a full day ahead of schedule. She clutched the discharge papers in her trembling hands as the taxi pulled into the circular driveway of their Potomac mansion, the sprawling estate that David had bought them 3 years ago when his tech company went public. "Keep the change," she whispered to the driver, handing him a $20 for the $12 fare. Her hands shook not from the pain medication but from excitement. She couldn't wait to surprise David and 7-year-old Destiny. She'd been texting David all morning about wanting to come home, but he'd insisted she stay the full week to be safe. Now she could show him she was stronger than he thought. The August heat hit her like a wall as she stepped out of the air-conditioned cab, her hospital bag weighing heavy in her weak grip. The 10-bedroom house loomed before her, every window dark except for David's home office on the 2nd floor. Strange, it was only 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. Destiny should be at day camp, but David usually worked from his downtown office. Simone fumbled with her keys at the front door, her surgical sight pulling with each movement. The massive foyer welcomed her with its cold marble floors and the ridiculous crystal chandelier David had insisted on buying. She called out softly, not wanting to startle him if he was on an important call. "David? Honey, I'm home." Silence. She climbed the curved staircase slowly, each step sending a dull ache through her abdomen. The hardwood floors creaked under her feet as she approached his office. The door was slightly ajar and she could hear voices, David's deep baritone and a woman's laugh. A laugh that definitely wasn't hers. Simone's heart began to race. She pressed closer to the door, her breath catching in her throat. "The papers are ready," David was saying. "Once she's out of the hospital and settled, I'll have her sign them. She trusts me completely, she won't even read the fine print." "And you're sure she doesn't suspect anything about the offshore accounts?" The woman's voice was sultry, confident. "What we're doing could destroy her financially. Vanessa, baby, she's been so focused on recovering that she hasn't asked questions about the business in months. By the time she realizes what's happening, we'll be untouchable. The company shares, the properties, the trust fund for Destiny, it'll all be protected from any divorce proceedings." Simone's knees buckled. She gripped the door frame to keep from falling, her surgical stitches screaming in protest. This couldn't be happening. Not David. Not the man who'd held her hand through every doctor's appointment, who'd promised to love her, in sickness and in health, just 5 years ago. "What about Destiny?" Vanessa asked, and Simone's blood ran cold. "She'll understand eventually. Kids are resilient. And legally, with the new custody arrangements I'm setting up, Simone won't have much say in where she lives or goes to school." The sound that escaped Simone's throat was somewhere between a gasp and a sob. In that split second, David turned toward the door. Their eyes met through the gap, his widening in shock and panic, hers filling with tears of rage and heartbreak. "Simone." He jumped up from behind his mahogany desk, where papers were scattered like evidence of his betrayal. "What are you? How did you?" She stumbled backward, her hospital bag falling to the floor with a heavy thud. Vanessa Sterling emerged from behind David, her blonde hair perfectly styled, wearing the navy business suit that Simone recognized from David's company photos. She was beautiful, young, and apparently very eager to help David destroy everything Simone had built with him. 6 days, Simone whispered, her voice barely audible. "I was gone for 6 days. Simone, let me explain. 6 days and you've already planned my entire destruction." Her voice grew stronger, fueled by a rage she'd never felt before. "My daughter's future. My home. Everything." David stepped toward her, his hands raised as if approaching a wounded animal. "It's not what it sounds like. The business decisions are complicated and—" "Get away from me." The words came out as a roar that surprised even her. "Don't you dare come near me." She turned and ran down the hallway, ignoring the burning pain in her side. Behind her, she could hear David calling her name, his footsteps heavy on the hardwood floor. She made it to their bedroom, and slammed the door, turning the lock with shaking fingers. Her phone was buzzing. Text after text from David, "Let me explain. It's not what you think. Please, we can work this out. I love you." Simone slid down the door until she was sitting on the floor, her back against the wood that separated her from the man who just shattered her world. She pulled her knees to her chest, careful of her stitches, and let the tears fall. Outside the door, she could hear hushed arguing, David and Vanessa discussing damage control. She realized. They were talking about her like she was a business problem to be solved, not a wife and mother whose life had just been torn apart. She looked around the bedroom they'd shared for 5 years. The king-sized bed where they'd made love just 2 weeks before her surgery. The walk-in closet filled with designer clothes he'd bought her. The framed photos of their wedding day, where her smile had been so bright, so trusting. Everything was a lie. Every "I love you," every plan they'd made for Destiny's future, every moment of intimacy, all of it had been part of some elaborate scheme to steal her life away from her. Her phone rang. David again. She declined the call and immediately dialed the one person who would know what to do. "Mama," she sobbed when Regina Crawford answered on the first ring. "Baby girl? What's wrong? Aren't you supposed to be in the hospital until tomorrow?" "Mama, I need you. I need you right now." "I'm already in the car," Regina said without hesitation. "Whatever it is, we're going to handle it. You hear me?" Simone closed her eyes and leaned against the door, David's voice still pleading on the other side. She thought about Destiny, who would be home from camp in 3 hours, expecting to find her parents happy and her mother safely recovering. Instead, she would find a war zone. But as her mother's words echoed in her ears, "We're going to handle it," Simone felt the first spark of something other than heartbreak. She felt the beginning of a fight. Regina Crawford burst through the front door like a force of nature. Her church dress wrinkled from the hour-long drive and her purse clutched like a weapon. At 58, she'd raised 4 children as a single mother while working double shifts as a registered nurse, and nothing, absolutely nothing, scared her when it came to protecting her family. "Where is he?" she demanded, finding Simone curled up on the living room sofa, still in her hospital clothes. "Upstairs in his office with her," Simone whispered. "They're probably planning their next move." Regina's jaw tightened. "Her? Vanessa Sterling. She works with David's company. I heard them talking about moving money offshore, about making sure I can't touch anything in a divorce." Simone's voice cracked. "Mama, they were discussing custody arrangements for Destiny like she's property to be divided. Over my dead body." Regina sat down beside her daughter and pulled her close. "Tell me everything you heard. Every single word." As Simone recounted the devastating conversation, Regina's expression grew darker. She'd never completely trusted David Crawford. Something about his too-perfect smile and his too-quick answers had always bothered her. But she'd kept quiet because Simone was happy, and because she'd wanted to believe her daughter had found the kind of security Regina had never been able to provide. "We need evidence," Regina said firmly. "And we need a lawyer. A good one." "Evidence? Mama, I don't even know where to start. David handles all the finances. All I have access to is our joint checking account and a credit card he gave me." "What about his computer? His phone?" "He changes his passwords constantly. Says it's for business security." The pieces were falling into place now. All the little things that had seemed quirky or protective now felt sinister. A car door slammed outside. Through the window, they watched Vanessa Sterling stride to her white BMW, her blonde hair catching the afternoon sunlight. She didn't look back at the house as she drove away. "Good," Regina muttered. "At least she's gone for now." Heavy footsteps echoed from the staircase. David appeared in the living room doorway, his usually perfect hair disheveled, his white dress shirt untucked. He looked between Simone and her mother with the expression of a man who'd been caught stealing from the collection plate. "Regina," he said carefully, "I didn't know you were coming. My daughter called me crying, talking about betrayal and custody battles. Of course I came." Regina stood up, all 5 feet and 2 inches of her radiating power. "Sit down, David. We need to talk." "I think it would be better if Simone and I discussed this privately." "I think you've had enough private discussions for one day," Regina interrupted. "Sit down." David reluctantly took the armchair across from them, his hands fidgeting with his wedding ring. "Simone, what you heard wasn't the full conversation. You're taking things out of context." "Then provide the context," Simone said, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. "Explain to me why you and your business associate were discussing moving our assets offshore to protect them from divorce proceedings when we're not getting divorced. It's standard business planning. Explain why you're setting up custody arrangements for Destiny when there's no custody dispute." David's face flushed red. "You don't understand the complexities of wealth management. There are legal protections that need to be in place. For when you leave me?" Simone stood up, ignoring the sharp pain in her side. "Is that what you were protecting against? Your own planned betrayal?" "I never said anything about leaving you. But you were thinking it." The words hung in the air like smoke. "You and Vanessa were planning it." Regina watched this exchange with the sharp eyes of someone who'd seen enough liars in her 60 years to recognize one immediately. David, I'm going to ask you a direct question and I want a direct answer. Are you having an affair with that woman? The silence stretched for what felt like hours. David's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Answer her, Simone whispered. It's complicated. It's a yes or no question, Regina pressed. Yes. The word fell from his lips like a stone. But it's not what you think. It started as a business relationship and things just developed. It doesn't change how I feel about you, Simone. It doesn't change our family. Simone felt something inside her chest crack open wider. Hearing him admit it was somehow worse than discovering it. How long? 6 months. 6 months. While she'd been planning Destiny's 8th birthday party. While she'd been talking about taking a family vacation to Disney World. While she'd been recovering from surgery, believing he was being supportive and loving. Get out, she said quietly. Simone, please. Get out of this house. Now. This is my house too. Legally. Legally, a lot of things are about to change, Regina interrupted, standing up and placing herself between David and Simone. I suggest you call yourself a lawyer's son because you're going to need one. David looked at Simone one last time, his expression a mixture of panic and frustration. I never wanted it to happen like this. I was trying to protect everyone. By destroying me? Simone's voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of absolute disbelief. By planning to take my daughter away from me? I would never take Destiny away from you. That's exactly what you were planning. I heard you. David grabbed his keys from the side table, his movements sharp and angry. I'll be at the downtown condo. When you're ready to discuss this rationally like adults, call me. The front door slammed behind him with enough force to rattle the picture frames. Regina immediately pulled out her phone. I'm calling Patricia Barnes. She's a divorce attorney who goes to my church. She's tough as nails and she doesn't lose. Mama, I can't afford a good lawyer. David controls all the money. Honey, Patricia Barnes doesn't lose because she knows how to get her clients what they're owed. Don't worry about the money right now. Regina dialed the number from memory. Patricia? It's Regina Crawford. I need you to drop everything and help my daughter. It's an emergency. While her mother talked to the lawyer, Simone walked to the window and looked out at the manicured lawn, the fountain in the center of the circular driveway, the wrought iron gates that surrounded their property. Everything looked exactly the same as it had this morning when she'd left the hospital, but nothing would ever be the same again. A school bus rounded the corner at the end of their street. Destiny would be home in 10 minutes, expecting to find her mother safely recovered and her father waiting with homework help and afternoon snacks. Instead, she would find her family broken. Simone pressed her palm against the cool glass of the window and made a promise to herself and to her daughter. Whatever it took, however long it took, she was going to fight for everything David was trying to steal from them. And she was going to win. The yellow school bus wheezed to a stop outside the gates, and Simone watched through the window as Destiny bounded down the steps, her purple backpack bouncing behind her. At 7 years old, she moved through the world with the kind of fearless joy that only children possess. The same joy that was about to be shattered. Mama. Mama, you're home. Destiny's voice echoed through the foyer as she ran inside, dropping her backpack and lunchbox in the middle of the marble floor. Did they fix your tummy? Does it still hurt? Simone knelt down carefully, her stitches pulling as she opened her arms. Destiny threw herself into the embrace with the full force of a child who'd missed her mother desperately. It's better, baby girl. Much better. Where's Daddy? He said he was going to take me for ice cream when you came home. Regina appeared in the doorway, her phone still pressed to her ear as she finished her conversation with the attorney. Patricia can see us tonight at 7, she announced. Emergency consultation. Destiny looked between her mother and grandmother, her bright brown eyes growing confused. Grandma Regina? Why are you here? And why does everybody look sad? Simone felt her heart breaking all over again. How do you explain to a 7-year-old that her father, the man who reads her bedtime stories and helps her with homework and promised to love her forever, has been planning to tear their family apart? Sweetheart, come sit with me, Simone said, leading Destiny to the couch. We need to talk about some grown-up things. Is Daddy sick? Is that why he's not here? No, baby. Daddy's not sick. Simone took her daughter's small hands in hers. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. Sometimes they do things that hurt the people they love. Destiny's face grew serious. What kind of mistakes? Simone looked at her mother helplessly. Regina sat down on the other side of Destiny and stroked her granddaughter's hair. Your daddy and mommy are having some problems, Regina said gently. They need to figure some things out. Are you getting divorced? The question came out so matter-of-factly that both women were stunned. Why would you ask that, sweetheart? Simone managed. Because Taylor's parents got divorced last year, and first they had problems and then her daddy moved out and then they went to court. Destiny's lower lip began to tremble. Is daddy moving out? The truth was written all over their faces. Destiny was too smart, too observant to be fooled by careful words and gentle euphemisms. She could see the evidence of their shattered world in her mother's red-rimmed eyes and her grandmother's tight jaw. I don't want you to get divorced. Destiny wailed, tears streaming down her cheeks. I want our family to stay together. I want daddy to come home. Simone pulled her daughter close, her own tears falling freely now. Oh baby, I know. I want that too. More than anything. Then why can't you just say sorry to each other and make up? That's what you tell me to do when I fight with my friends. The simplicity of childhood logic was heartbreaking. If only adult betrayal could be solved with apologies and hugs and promises to do better next time. Sometimes, Regina said carefully, the problems are too big for sorry to fix. Sometimes grown-ups hurt each other in ways that can't be undone. Did you hurt daddy? Is that why he left? No, sweetheart. I didn't hurt daddy. Did daddy hurt you? Simone closed her eyes. Even now, even after everything, she wanted to protect Destiny from the ugly truth about her father. She wanted to preserve whatever innocence was left. But Destiny deserved honesty. She deserved to understand why her world was falling apart. Yes, Simone whispered. Daddy hurt me very badly. How? He broke promises he made to me. Important promises that families make to each other. Destiny was quiet for a long moment, processing this information with the seriousness of a child trying to understand adult pain. Will I still see daddy? Of course you will. No matter what happens between daddy and me, he will always be your father, and you will always be his little girl. But what if I don't want to see him? The question came out so quietly that Simone almost missed it. What do you mean, baby? If he hurt you, then he's not nice anymore. And I'm not supposed to spend time with people who aren't nice. Simone's heart broke a little more. Even at 7, Destiny understood the fundamental wrongness of what her father had done. She understood that hurting people you love has consequences. Daddy still loves you very much, Regina said. Even when grown-ups make bad choices with each other, they can still be good parents. But what if he hurts me too? The question hung in the air like a dark cloud. It was the fear Simone hadn't dared voice, the worry that David's capacity for deception and betrayal might extend to their daughter. What if the custody arrangements he'd been discussing weren't just about winning or control? What if they were about something worse? Baby girl, Simone said firmly, if anyone ever hurts you or makes you feel unsafe, you tell me immediately. Or Grandma Regina. Or any grown-up you trust. Do you understand? Destiny nodded solemnly. Are we going to be okay? Me and you? Yes, Simone said with more conviction than she felt. We're going to be more than okay. We're going to be strong and we're going to take care of each other, and we're going to build a beautiful life together. Will we have to move out of our house? Another question Simone couldn't answer with certainty. The house, the cars, the bank accounts, everything was in David's name or tied up in his business holdings. Legally, she might have no claim to any of it. I don't know yet, sweetheart. But wherever we live, as long as we're together, it will be home. Destiny seemed to accept this answer. She wiped her nose on her sleeve and looked at her grandmother. Grandma Regina, are you going to stay with us? As long as you need me, baby girl. Good. Because Mama's tummy still hurts and somebody needs to help take care of her. The role reversal was heartbreaking. A 7-year-old worried about taking care of her mother instead of the other way around. But it was also inspiring. Even in the midst of losing everything she'd known as stable and secure, Destiny's first instinct was to protect and care for the people she loved. If a 7-year-old could be that brave, Simone thought, then maybe she could find the courage to fight back against the man who'd tried to destroy them. The front door opened and David's voice echoed through the foyer. Destiny? Daddy's home. Destiny's body tensed in Simone's arms. For the first time in her young life, the sound of her father's voice didn't fill her with excitement. I don't want to see him right now, she whispered. Regina stood up like a soldier preparing for battle. You don't have to, sweetheart. Your mama and I will handle this. As David's footsteps approached the living room, Simone held her daughter closer and made another silent promise. Whatever happened next, Destiny would never again have to question whether the adults in her life would protect her. That was a promise she intended to keep. Patricia Barnes arrived at 7 o'clock sharp, carrying a leather briefcase that had seen more courtroom battles than most lawyers experience in a lifetime. She was a small woman with silver-streaked hair and eyes that missed nothing, the kind of attorney who looked like she could be someone's favorite aunt until she opened her mouth in court and destroyed opposing counsel. "Regina told me the basics over the phone," Patricia said, settling into the living room chair where David had sat hours earlier. "But I need to hear everything from you in your own words." Destiny had been tucked into bed with extra kisses and promises that everything would be okay. Now, with Regina taking notes on a legal pad, Simone recounted every detail of the conversation she'd overheard. "Offshore accounts," Patricia repeated, making notes of her own. "Custody arrangements being set up without your knowledge. Assets being moved to protect them from divorce proceedings. Did he use any specific names? Banks, legal firms, anything?" "He mentioned something about papers being ready for me to sign. And Vanessa, the woman, she seemed to know details about our financial situation that I don't even know." Patricia's pen stopped moving. "What do you mean?" "David's always handled all the finances. He says it's because the business is complicated, and he doesn't want me to worry about it. I have access to our joint checking account and one credit card, but that's it." "Do you know how much money your husband is worth?" Simone felt embarrassed admitting it. "Not exactly. I know his company went public 3 years ago, and he bought this house and the downtown condo afterward. But he always says the money is tied up in investments and business ventures. Mrs. Crawford, your husband's company, Crawford Technologies, is valued at approximately $1.2 billion. He personally owns 40% of the company, plus significant real estate holdings, investment portfolios, and what appears to be at least 3 offshore holding companies." The number was so large that Simone couldn't process it. She'd known David was wealthy, successful enough to buy million-dollar homes and send Destiny to private school, but a billionaire? "I had no idea it was that much." "That's intentional," Patricia said grimly. "Financial isolation is a classic control tactic. Keep the wife uninformed so she can't make independent decisions or protect herself if the marriage fails." Regina looked up from her note-taking. "So what do we do? How do we prove what he's planning?" "We need evidence. Bank records, business documents, communication between David and this Vanessa woman. Anything that shows intent to hide assets or manipulate custody arrangements." "His computer is password protected," Simone said. "And he takes his phone everywhere." "What about paper documents? Does he keep files at home?" "In his office upstairs. But it's always locked when he's not there." Patricia smiled for the first time since arriving. "Then it's a good thing he's not here." 10 minutes later, the 3 women stood outside David's home office. The door was indeed locked, but Regina had raised 4 children. She knew how to pick a simple interior door lock with a bobby pin and a credit card. "This feels like breaking and entering," Simone whispered. "It's your house too," Patricia said firmly. "And we're looking for evidence of financial fraud, which is a crime. If David has been hiding assets to avoid fair distribution in a divorce, that's illegal." The office was immaculate. Mahogany desk, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with business journals and awards. A framed photo of David and Simone on their wedding day sat prominently on the desk, which felt like a cruel joke given the circumstances. Patricia went straight to the filing cabinets while Regina checked the desk drawers. Simone felt frozen, overwhelmed by the violation of being in her husband's private space without permission, even though he'd been violating her trust for months. "Simone, look at this," Regina called softly. On David's desk calendar, today's date was marked with a note. "S home from hospital VIP dinner 8 p.m. Vanessa's initials. He'd been planning to take his mistress to dinner on the same day his wife was supposed to be released from the hospital. "That's not even the worst part," Patricia said from across the room. She was holding a folder labeled, "Estate Planning Revised." Inside were legal documents dated 2 weeks ago, while Simone was having surgery. "In the event of dissolution of marriage," Patricia read aloud, "custody of minor child will default to father, with mother receiving supervised visitation pending psychological evaluation." Psychological evaluation? Simone's voice was barely a whisper. "Subject has history of emotional instability and may require extended mental health treatment to ensure fitness for parenting." Patricia's voice grew angrier with each word. "This is completely fabricated. There's no medical documentation to support any of this." "What emotional instability?" Regina demanded. "Simone's never even been to therapy." "That's the point," Patricia explained. David was creating a paper trail to make Simone look unfit. If he could establish a pattern of emotional problems, He could use it to justify taking primary custody. Simone sank into one of the leather chairs, her hands shaking. He was going to take Destiny away from me and make it look like it was for her own good. We need copies of everything, Patricia said, pulling out her phone to take pictures. Bank statements, business documents, correspondence, these custody papers, everything. They worked quickly and quietly, photographing document after document. Offshore account statements showing millions of dollars being moved to untraceable holdings. Business contracts that excluded Simone from any ownership despite her contributions to David's early career. Email printouts discussing neutralizing the wife's potential claims. The most damning evidence was a legal brief titled Preemptive Custody Strategy, outlining a plan to have Simone committed for a psychiatric evaluation that would coincide with David filing for divorce and emergency custody. This is beyond betrayal, Regina said, her voice tight with rage. This is pure evil. It's also completely illegal, Patricia added. This constitutes fraud, manipulation of the legal system, and probably a dozen other crimes. As they finished gathering evidence, Simone felt something she hadn't expected: relief. Not because the situation was less devastating than she'd thought, but because now she understood the full scope of what she was fighting against. David hadn't just been having an affair. He'd been methodically planning to destroy her life, take her daughter, and leave her with nothing. He'd been preparing to have her declared mentally unfit based on lies and fabricated evidence. But now she had proof. Now she had weapons. What happens next? She asked Patricia. Next, we file an emergency motion to freeze all assets pending investigation. We file for temporary custody arrangements that keep Destiny with you. And we prepare for the fight of your life. Patricia packed the copied documents into her briefcase with the efficiency of someone who'd done this many times before. Mrs. Crawford, I want you to understand something. Your husband has been planning this for months, maybe longer. He has expensive lawyers and unlimited resources. This is not going to be easy. I don't care how hard it is, Simone said quietly. He tried to steal my daughter. He was going to have me committed to a mental hospital. I don't care if I have to fight him for the rest of my life. Good, Patricia said with a fierce smile. Because that's exactly the attitude we need to destroy his plans and get you everything you're entitled to. As they left David's office, Simone took one last look at the wedding photo on his desk. The woman in that picture looked so happy, so trusting. She believed her husband loved her enough to protect her from the world. Now she knew the truth. Sometimes the person you need protection from is the one who promised to love you forever. But she also knew something else: she was done being protected. From now on, she was going to be the one doing the fighting. Word spread through their neighborhood like wildfire. By Thursday morning, Simone's doorbell had been ringing since dawn. Mrs. Evelyn from next door arrived first, carrying a casserole dish and wearing the kind of determined expression that meant business. "Child, I've been watching that man come and go at all hours for months," the 67-year-old retired teacher announced, marching straight into the kitchen. "I knew something wasn't right when he started getting picked up by that fancy white car instead of driving his own Tesla." "You saw Vanessa picking him up?" "Honey, I see everything that happens on this street. That woman's been coming around since before you went into the hospital. Sometimes she'd sit in her car for 20 minutes waiting for him." Mrs. Evelyn set the casserole on the counter with authority. "I took pictures." Simone's heart leaped. "Pictures? Baby girl, I was suspicious when a married man starts getting rides from a woman who isn't his wife. Especially when she's waiting outside while his family is home." Mrs. Evelyn pulled out her smartphone with the pride of someone who'd mastered technology later in life. "Look here." The photos were time-stamped and clear. Vanessa's BMW parked outside their house on multiple occasions, David getting into the passenger seat, the two of them talking intimately through the car window. The most damning photo showed them kissing through the open driver's side window. "Mrs. Evelyn, these are incredible. Can you send them to me?" "Already sent them to your mama's phone. And I called my nephew Jerome, he's a private investigator, told him to get over here and talk to you." Before Simone could respond, another car pulled into the driveway. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Jerome Washington." And Evelyn called. "On my way up." Jerome Washington looked nothing like his aunt, tall and serious where she was tiny and animated, but he carried himself with the same quiet authority. He listened intently as Simone explained the situation, occasionally asking clarifying questions that made her feel like he was building a case in his head. "I can have a complete financial workup on your husband within 48 hours, he said, making notes in a small leather notebook. Bank records, business transactions, property holdings, communications with this Vanessa woman. If he's hiding assets, I'll find them. How much will this cost? I don't have access to. Don't worry about the money right now, Jerome interrupted. Aunt Evelyn explained the situation. We'll work something out. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Destiny's day camp counselor, Ashley, along with 2 other mothers from the program. We heard about what's happening, Ashley said quietly, mindful that Destiny was upstairs getting dressed for camp. We wanted you to know that if you need anything, rides for Destiny, someone to watch her after camp, meals, whatever, we're here. One of the mothers, Sarah, stepped forward. My ex-husband tried something similar when we divorced. Hiding money, threatening to take the kids. I have the name of a financial forensics expert who saved my life in court. The other mother, Lisa, handed Simone a business card. This is my therapist. She specializes in helping women through high-conflict divorces. Your lawyer might want documentation that you're emotionally stable, especially if David tries to claim otherwise. Simone felt overwhelmed by the sudden outpouring of support from people who barely knew her. I don't understand. Why are you all helping me? Because we've been where you are, Sarah said simply. And because what's happening to you could happen to any of us. Plus, Mrs. Evelyn added from the kitchen, that husband of yours has been acting like he's better than everyone else for years. Driving around in that fancy car, talking down to the landscaping crew, acting like this neighborhood wasn't good enough for him anymore. It's about time someone knocked him down a peg. Throughout the morning, more neighbors arrived. The woman from 3 houses down brought homemade bread and phone numbers for a tax attorney and a financial planner. The couple across the street offered to change their security camera angles to cover Simone's driveway in case David tried anything inappropriate. The teenage boy who walked dogs in the neighborhood volunteered to keep an eye on the house during his afternoon routes. By noon, Simone's kitchen looked like the command center for a small army. Business cards, phone numbers, casserole dishes, and legal documents covered every surface. Regina was coordinating the various offers of help while Jerome interviewed neighbors about David's recent behavior patterns. This is incredible, Simone told her mother. I had no idea all these people were paying attention. Honey, when a woman's world gets turned upside down, other women notice. We've all been in situations where we needed help, even if it wasn't as dramatic as yours. Patricia Barnes arrived for a lunch meeting and surveyed the scene with professional appreciation. This is exactly what we need, she told Simone. Community support, witnesses to David's behavior, financial experts, and documentation. David's counting on you being isolated and vulnerable. Instead, you've got an entire support network. I don't even know most of these people very well. That's what makes their testimony so powerful, Patricia explained. These aren't your close friends who might be seen as biased. These are objective neighbors who observed suspicious behavior and are willing to testify about it. Jerome approached them with his notebook full of new information. I've talked to 8 different neighbors. The pattern is clear. David's been acting secretive and suspicious for months. Late-night departures, unknown woman picking him up, phone calls taken outside on the lawn, packages being delivered to neighbors' houses and picked up later. Packages to neighbors' houses? Financial documents, according to Mrs. Chen from 2 doors down. David asked if he could have some business papers delivered to her address because he was having issues with his home mail. She thought it was odd but didn't want to be unfriendly. Patricia's eyes lit up. That's evidence of intentional deception. He was having documents sent elsewhere to keep them hidden from you. Mrs. Evelyn returned from the backyard, where she'd been giving Jerome a tour of her security camera positions. Child, I hate to interrupt, but that white BMW just pulled up to your gates. Everyone froze. Through the window, they could see Vanessa Sterling's car idling outside the property entrance, the driver clearly trying to see into the house. She's got some nerve, Regina muttered. Jerome was already moving toward the front door. I'm going to get pictures of her here, in case she tries to claim she's never been to the property. But Vanessa didn't get out of the car. After 2 minutes of surveillance, she drove away. She's checking to see if David's here, Patricia observed. Which means they don't have a way to communicate safely right now. That's good for us. It suggests panic on their part. The afternoon brought even more support. Destiny's 2nd grade teacher called to offer flexible scheduling if legal meetings interfered with school pickup. The owner of their local grocery store, a woman who'd built her business from nothing after her own difficult divorce, stopped by with gift cards and contact information for a financial recovery specialist. Most surprisingly, David's own cousin Marcus called. Simone almost didn't answer the phone, expecting it to be another uncomfortable conversation with one of David's relatives taking his side. Instead, Marcus said, "Simone, I heard what happened. I want you to know that some of us have been worried about David's behavior for a while. If you need someone from his family to testify about character issues or concerning changes in his personality, I'm willing to do that." Marcus, thank you. But won't that cause problems with your family? Honestly, David's caused problems with the family all by himself. Ever since his company went public, he's been different. Secretive, arrogant, cutting people off. We've been watching him become someone we don't recognize. By evening, when the last neighbor had left and Jerome had finished his preliminary investigation, Simone felt something she hadn't experienced in days: hope. She wasn't alone. She wasn't powerless. And David's careful plans to isolate and destroy her were crumbling before they'd even been fully implemented. "Tomorrow," Patricia announced, packing up her papers, "we file our paperwork. Emergency asset freeze, temporary custody arrangements, and a request for full financial discovery. By Monday morning, David Crawford is going to realize he seriously underestimated who he was messing with." As Simone tucked Destiny into bed that night, her daughter asked, "Mama, who were all those people today?" "Friends, baby girl. People who want to help us. I'm glad we have so many friends. Daddy doesn't have very many friends anymore." The observation was startling in its accuracy. David had systematically alienated himself from family and neighbors in pursuit of his secret plans. While he'd been building a case against Simone, she'd unknowingly been building an army of allies. For the first time since this nightmare began, Simone felt like she might actually win. Friday morning arrived with the sound of legal papers being served. Simone watched through the window as a process server approached David's downtown condo, knowing that in a few minutes, her husband would discover that his carefully laid plans had been shattered overnight. Patricia had worked until midnight filing emergency motions with the court. By 9 a.m., David would be legally prevented from moving any assets, changing beneficiaries on any accounts, or altering custody arrangements for Destiny. More importantly, he would be required to appear in court Monday morning to explain his offshore account activities. How long before he realizes what happened? Regina asked, setting a cup of coffee beside Simone at the kitchen table. "About 10 minutes, Jerome answered from his laptop across the room. "I've been monitoring his credit card activity. He just paid for breakfast at that expensive restaurant downtown. Process server should reach him any minute now." The phone rang. David's name appeared on the caller ID. "Let it go to voicemail," Patricia advised. She'd arrived early to coordinate the day's activities. "Everything he says now can be used in court. We want him panicked and making mistakes." The voicemail notification chimed. Simone played it on speaker. "Simone, what the hell is this?" David's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. "Emergency asset freeze? Financial discovery? Are you insane? You can't just call me back. We need to talk. This is ridiculous." He called 4 more times in the next hour, each message angrier than the last. By the 5th call, he'd moved from anger to threats. "You have no idea what you're doing," his voice snarled through the speaker. "I have the best lawyers in the city. I will destroy you in court. And Destiny will understand what kind of mother you really are when this is over." Patricia smiled grimly. "Perfect. Threatening messages are exactly what we need to establish his character." Jerome looked up from his computer screen. "We just got confirmation that 3 offshore accounts have been frozen by federal banking authorities. Your husband is about to discover that moving money internationally without proper documentation is a very serious crime." Simone felt a mix of satisfaction and terror. This was really happening. There was no going back now. The house phone rang. A number she didn't recognize. "Mrs. Crawford? This is James Mitchell from Crawford Technologies Board of Directors. I need to speak with you urgently about your husband's business activities." Patricia nodded for Simone to take the call. "Mr. Mitchell, what can I do for you?" "Mrs. Crawford, the board has become aware of some irregularities in David's recent financial transactions. Federal investigators contacted us this morning about offshore account activities that weren't disclosed to the board or to company shareholders." Simone's heart raced. Federal investigators? When assets are moved offshore without proper documentation, especially in amounts exceeding $10 million, it triggers automatic federal oversight. "Mrs. Crawford, we need to know, were you aware of your husband's international financial activities?" "I had no idea. I just discovered the offshore accounts yesterday." "Mrs. Crawford, I'm going to be frank with you. If David has been using company resources for personal asset protection in anticipation of divorce proceedings, that constitutes embezzlement and fraud. The board is meeting in emergency session this afternoon to discuss his status with the company. After the call ended, Patricia was practically glowing. This is better than I could have hoped. David's not just facing divorce proceedings, he's facing federal investigation and potential criminal charges. What does this mean for Destiny and me? It means David's plans to control the divorce proceedings through financial manipulation have completely backfired. He's now fighting for his own freedom, not just his assets. Jerome's phone buzzed. Vanessa Sterling just made a very interesting call to her attorney. My contact at the phone company confirmed she's seeking immunity in exchange for testimony about David's financial activities. She's turning on him? Looks like it. When federal investigators get involved, people start looking out for themselves very quickly. The afternoon brought a parade of unexpected visitors. David's business partner arrived first, looking haggard and desperate. Simone, I need to know what David told you about the Cayman Islands accounts, he said without preamble. The SEC is asking questions I can't answer. I don't know anything about Cayman Islands accounts. He never mentioned moving company funds offshore for tax purposes? David never discussed business with me. He said it was too complicated for me to understand. The man's face went pale. Jesus Christ. He's been forging your signature on authorization documents for months. The investigators are going to think you were part of the scheme. Patricia immediately intervened. My client had no knowledge of any financial irregularities. Any documents bearing her signature were signed without her understanding of their true purpose. After David's business partner left, Jerome pulled Simone aside. I need to show you something, but it's going to be difficult to see. He opened his laptop to a folder labeled Surveillance Photos. The images showed David and Vanessa at restaurants, hotels, and business meetings over the past 6 months. But the most shocking photos were from a real estate office. They've been looking at properties together, Jerome explained. Houses in countries that don't have extradition treaties with the United States. David's been planning an exit strategy in case his financial schemes were discovered. He was going to leave the country? With Vanessa, with millions in untraceable offshore funds, and potentially with Destiny if his custody plans had worked. The magnitude of David's betrayal kept expanding. This wasn't just about an affair or even financial deception. This was about a man who'd been systematically planning to steal everything, including their daughter, and disappear to a place where law enforcement couldn't touch him. Simone's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Vanessa. We need to talk. There are things about David you don't know. Meet me at the Starbucks on Connecticut Avenue in 1 hour. Come alone. Patricia read the message and shook her head. Absolutely not. This could be a trap. Or it could be our chance to get inside information, Jerome countered. If she's really trying to save herself, she might give us everything we need to destroy David's remaining credibility. It's too dangerous. I'll go with surveillance, Jerome suggested. Simone meets with her while I monitor from nearby. If anything feels wrong, we abort. An hour later, Simone sat across from Vanessa Sterling in a busy Starbucks, studying the woman who'd helped plan her destruction. Up close, Vanessa looked younger than her 28 years and terrified. David's going to blame everything on me, Vanessa said without preamble. The offshore accounts, the custody plans, even the affair. He's already told his lawyers that I manipulated him into all of it. Did you? Are you kidding? I'm a junior associate at his consulting firm. David Crawford is worth over $1 billion. Who do you think had the power in our relationship? Vanessa pulled out a manila envelope. These are copies of documents David had me prepare. Financial transfers, custody applications, even a psychiatric evaluation request form with your name already filled in. Simone's hands shook as she reviewed the papers. Everything was worse than they'd discovered the night before. David hadn't just been planning to have her committed. He'd been planning to have her declared incompetent so he could gain control of any assets that might be awarded to her in the divorce. Why are you telling me this? Because federal investigators interviewed me this morning, and they made it clear that I can either cooperate with their investigation or become a co-defendant in a fraud case that could send me to prison for 20 years. Vanessa's voice was barely above a whisper. David convinced me that you were mentally unstable, that you were a threat to Destiny's welfare, that he was protecting his family. I believed him because I wanted to believe him. And now I realize that David Crawford is a sociopath who uses people until they're no longer useful, then discards them. I don't want to be discarded in a federal prison. The meeting lasted 30 minutes. By the end, Simone had documents that proved David's criminal intent beyond any reasonable doubt. More importantly, she had a witness who was willing to testify about every aspect of his deception. As they prepared to leave, Vanessa made one final confession. There's something else you should know. David's been planning this for over a year. Long before he met me. He's done this before. What do you mean? His first wife. The one who supposedly died in a car accident? She was planning to leave him. She discovered he was stealing money from his first company. The accident happened the day before she was supposed to meet with investigators. The words hit Simone like a physical blow. David's first wife, Sarah, had been killed in a late-night crash on a deserted highway 5 years ago. David had grieved appropriately, spoke of her lovingly, even kept her picture in his office. Simone had never questioned the story. Are you saying he killed her? I'm saying the timing was very convenient. And I'm saying David Crawford will do anything to protect himself and his money, including destroying anyone who threatens him. As Simone walked back to her car, her entire worldview shifted again. She wasn't just fighting for her assets and custody of Destiny. She was fighting for their lives. The man she'd married, the father of her child, might be a murderer. The emergency meeting convened at Patricia's law office at 8 o'clock that evening. In addition to Simone, Regina, and Patricia, Jerome had brought his contact from the FBI Financial Crimes Unit, Agent Sarah Kim, who'd been tracking suspicious offshore activity for months. Mrs. Crawford, Agent Kim began, spreading files across the conference table. Your husband has been under federal surveillance since January. We've been building a case against him for financial fraud, tax evasion, and money laundering. Simone felt the room spinning. Since January? But his affair with Vanessa only started 6 months ago. The financial crimes started much earlier, Agent Kim explained. We believe David has been systematically moving money offshore for over 2 years, coinciding with his company's major growth period. What's new is the personal component, the affair, the custody manipulation, the planned psychiatric commitment. Patricia leaned forward. Agent Kim, Vanessa Sterling provided some disturbing information about David's first wife. Are you investigating that situation as well? Agent Kim's expression grew grave. Sarah Crawford's death has been reopened as a suspicious death investigation. We found communication between David and offshore account managers dating back to the week before her accident. Regina reached for Simone's hand as the implications sank in. He killed her, Simone whispered. He killed Sarah and he was planning to destroy me the same way. We can't prove homicide at this point, Agent Kim cautioned. But the financial evidence suggests David has a pattern of eliminating threats to his wealth and control. Sarah had discovered his early financial crimes. You discovered his current ones. Jerome opened his laptop and pulled up a detailed timeline. I've been tracking David's behavior patterns since the surveillance began. Every time someone gets close to exposing him, they either disappear, have accidents, or suffer sudden mental health crises that discredit their testimony. How many people are we talking about? Patricia asked. At least 4 business associates who questioned his accounting practices over the past 3 years. 1 died in a climbing accident, 1 was committed to a psychiatric facility after a supposed suicide attempt, and 2 moved out of the country suddenly after receiving large financial settlements. Agent Kim nodded grimly. This is why we need your cooperation, Mrs. Crawford. You're the closest we've gotten to someone with direct evidence of David's methods. What do you need me to do? First, we need you to be extremely careful. David is cornered now, and cornered criminals are unpredictable. We're assigning protective surveillance to you and Destiny. Protective surveillance? Unmarked agents will be monitoring your house, Destiny's school, and your movements. If David approaches you directly or attempts any intimidation, we'll intervene immediately. Patricia spread out the custody and financial documents they'd gathered. What about the legal proceedings? Can we continue with the divorce case while the federal investigation is ongoing? The divorce will actually help our case, Agent Kim explained. Family court proceedings require full financial disclosure. David will be forced to reveal assets and explain discrepancies, which gives us additional evidence for the criminal case. Simone's phone rang. David's name appeared on the screen. Agent Kim gestured for her to answer, then activated a recording device. Keep him talking as long as possible. Hello, David. Simone, we need to talk. Face to face. This whole situation has gotten out of hand. I don't think that's a good idea. Listen to me very carefully. David's voice took on a cold, threatening tone. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I've built an empire, and I will not let you or anyone else destroy what I've worked for. Is that a threat? It's a statement of fact. I've handled problems before and I can handle this one. But it would be much easier for everyone if you simply agreed to a reasonable settlement. What kind of settlement? You get the house and enough money to live comfortably. I get primary custody of Destiny and control of all business assets. You sign a non-disclosure agreement and never speak about our marriage or my business activities to anyone. Agent Kim was frantically taking notes, circling phrases like, handled problems before, and much easier for everyone. And if I don't agree? The pause was long and chilling. Then you'll discover that sometimes people who cause problems for me tend to have problems of their own. Serious problems. Life-changing problems. David, are you threatening to hurt me? I'm offering you a choice, Simone. The easy way or the hard way. But either way, this ends with me getting what I want. The call ended abruptly. Agent Kim looked up from her notes with grim satisfaction. That was a direct threat recorded on federal surveillance equipment. Combined with the financial evidence and witness testimony, we now have enough to arrest David Crawford on multiple felony charges. When? Regina asked. Tomorrow morning. We'll coordinate with local police to ensure Destiny is safely at school when the arrest happens. Patricia began organizing documents. This changes our entire legal strategy. Instead of fighting a divorce case against a billionaire, we're now dealing with a soon-to-be federal prisoner. What does this mean for Destiny's custody? Simone asked. Full custody to you, obviously. The court won't award any parental rights to someone facing federal charges for fraud and potentially murder. Agent Kim packed up her files. Mrs. Crawford, I need you to understand that David will likely make bail initially. He has significant financial resources and no prior convictions. The period between his arrest and trial could be the most dangerous time for you. How long are we talking about? Potentially several months. Federal cases move slowly, especially complex financial crimes cases. Jerome closed his laptop. I'll maintain surveillance on David's activities during the bail period. We need to know if he attempts to contact Simone or Destiny, or if he tries to leave the country. As the meeting broke up, Simone felt simultaneously relieved and terrified. David would be arrested, which meant he could no longer hide behind his wealth and power. But he would also be desperate, which made him exponentially more dangerous. Mama, she said to Regina as they walked to their cars, I need to tell Destiny what's happening. She's going to see news reports, hear other kids talking about it at school. What are you going to say? The truth. That her father made very bad choices that hurt people, and now he has to face the consequences of those choices. And if she asks if he's dangerous? Simone looked up at the dark sky, thinking about Sarah Crawford's mysterious death, about the business associates who'd suffered sudden misfortunes, about David's cold voice threatening her over the phone. I'm going to tell her that we're safe now because good people are protecting us, but that she should never be alone with her father again. It was a conversation no mother should have to have with her 7-year-old daughter. But it was a conversation that might save both their lives. As Simone drove home, she realized that tomorrow would bring the end of one nightmare and the beginning of another. David Crawford, the loving husband, was gone forever, revealed as an illusion. David Crawford, the dangerous criminal, was about to become her reality. The FBI arrived at 6:17 a.m. on Saturday morning, just as Agent Kim had promised. Simone watched from her kitchen window as 3 black SUVs surrounded David's downtown condo building, their occupants moving with the precision of a military operation. Destiny was still asleep upstairs, unaware that her father was about to become front-page news across the Washington metropolitan area. Regina sat beside Simone at the kitchen table, both women holding coffee cups they weren't drinking, watching history unfold through the live news coverage on Simone's phone. Federal agents have arrested tech billionaire David Crawford on charges of financial fraud, money laundering, and tax evasion, the news anchor reported. Crawford, whose company Crawford Technologies went public 3 years ago, is accused of moving over $50 million to offshore accounts to avoid taxation and hide assets from potential divorce proceedings. The footage showed David being led from his building in handcuffs, his usually perfect hair disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled from what had obviously been a sleepless night. For the first time since this nightmare began, he looked powerless. More troubling allegations have surfaced regarding Crawford's personal conduct, the anchor continued. Sources close to the investigation suggest that Crawford may have been planning to have his wife involuntarily committed to a psychiatric facility as part of an elaborate scheme to gain custody of their 7-year-old daughter. Simone's phone rang immediately. Patricia Barnes calling with an update. He's been charged with 17 federal counts, Patricia reported. The judge set bail at $20 million, which David's attorneys are arguing is excessive. Will he make bail? Probably, but it doesn't matter. The conditions of his release include surrender of his passport, no contact with you or Destiny, and GPS monitoring. He's essentially under house arrest. What about the custody situation? Emergency hearing is scheduled for Monday morning. Given the federal charges, I expect the judge to award you full temporary custody with no visitation rights for David. After hanging up with Patricia, Simone faced the task she'd been dreading, waking Destiny and explaining why her father's picture was on every news channel in the city. She found her daughter already awake, sitting on her bed and staring out the window at the news vans that had gathered outside their gates. "Mama, why are there so many people outside?" Simone sat down beside her and pulled her close. "Remember how we talked about Daddy making some bad choices?" "Yes." "Well, those bad choices were against the law. So the police came to arrest him this morning." Destiny processed this information with the seriousness that had become her default expression since her world started falling apart. "Is he going to jail?" "He might. There will be a trial where a judge and jury decide if he really broke the law." "Did he hurt somebody?" The question was so direct, so perceptive, that Simone felt her breath catch. "We think he might have hurt people, yes." "Did he hurt you?" "Yes, baby girl. He hurt me very badly." "Was he going to hurt me?" This was the question Simone had been dreading most. How do you tell a 7-year-old that her father might have been planning to kidnap her and disappear to another country? "Daddy had some plans that would have separated us," Simone said carefully. "But the police stopped him before anything bad could happen." Destiny was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked, "Am I still going to have to see him?" "Not unless you want to. And not unless a judge says it's safe." "I don't want to see him. Not if he was going to hurt you." The simple declaration broke Simone's heart and filled her with pride at the same time. Even at 7 years old, Destiny understood that love means protecting the people you care about, not hurting them. The rest of Saturday was a blur of phone calls, legal meetings, and media management. Jerome had stationed himself at the house to coordinate security and field calls from reporters. Mrs. Evelyn had appointed herself as the neighborhood's unofficial spokesperson, cheerfully telling any journalist who approached that David Crawford never fit in around here anyway. The most challenging call came from David's mother, Eleanor Crawford, a woman who'd never fully accepted Simone into the family. "This is all a misunderstanding," Eleanor insisted during their brief conversation. "David would never do the things they're accusing him of. He's a good man who's been set up by jealous business competitors." "Mrs. Crawford, I understand this is difficult for you. What's difficult is watching my son's life be destroyed by lies and manipulation. I hope you're proud of yourself for participating in this witch hunt." The call ended with Eleanor's threat to sue for grandparental visitation rights, which Patricia immediately dismissed as an empty threat from a woman in denial about her son's true character. By evening, the media circus had died down enough for Simone to take a walk around their neighborhood with Destiny. The little girl held her mother's hand tightly as they passed the houses where their neighbors had offered so much support over the past week. "Mama, are we going to be okay?" Destiny asked as they paused by the fountain in their front yard. "We're going to be better than okay," Simone replied, and for the first time she truly believed it. "We're going to be free." As they walked back toward the house, Simone's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Saw the news. Proud of you for fighting back. Call me when you're ready to talk about the future. Jamal." Jamal Brooks. Her college friend who'd become a successful architect, who'd had a crush on her before she'd met David, who'd sent a congratulations card when Destiny was born and had always stayed in polite touch through social media. For the first time in days, Simone smiled about something that had nothing to do with legal victories or David's downfall. Maybe there really could be a future after all of this was over. Maybe there could be happiness again. "Who was that?" Destiny asked, noticing her mother's expression. "An old friend. Someone I haven't talked to in a long time." "Are you going to call him back?" "Maybe. Someday soon." As they reached their front door, Simone realized that David's arrest wasn't just the end of his ability to hurt them. It was the beginning of their ability to imagine a life beyond survival. For the first time in years, the future felt full of possibilities instead of threats. Sunday morning brought news that David had made bail and was confined to his downtown condo under electronic monitoring. But it also brought something unexpected. A letter from Vanessa Sterling. "I know you have no reason to trust me," the letter read, but I wanted you to know that I'm testifying against David in exchange for immunity. I'm also leaving the country for my own safety once the trial is over. I'm sorry for my part in almost destroying your life. You deserved so much better than what both of us put you through." Attached to the letter was a flash drive containing every communication she'd ever had with David, including recorded phone calls where he discussed his plans for Simone and Destiny in disturbing detail. As Simone listened to her husband's voice planning her destruction with casual indifference, she felt the last vestiges of love and trust finally die. Whatever happened in the trial, whatever the future held, she would never again doubt that she'd made the right choice in fighting back. David Crawford had tried to erase her. Instead, he'd erased himself. 3 months later, Simone sat in the front row of federal district court, watching her former husband's life systematically dismantled by evidence. David looked smaller somehow, diminished by the orange jumpsuit and handcuffs, his billion-dollar empire reduced to a defendant's table and a stack of legal papers. The trial had become a media sensation. The billionaire betrayal, the newspapers called it. Tech mogul's murder plot, the tabloids screamed. Every day brought new revelations about David's elaborate schemes, each more shocking than the last. Vanessa Sterling had been the prosecution's star witness, testifying for 3 days about David's detailed plans to destroy Simone's life and potentially eliminate her entirely if she became too much of a threat. Her testimony had been devastating, clinical in its precision and terrifying in its implications. "Mr. Crawford told me that problems had a way of solving themselves," Vanessa had testified, "and that people who threatened his business interests tended to disappear from his life one way or another." The prosecutor had then presented evidence linking David to the suspicious deaths or disappearances of 4 other people who'd posed financial or legal threats to him over the past 5 years. Sarah Crawford's car accident was the most damning evidence. Investigators had found that the brakes had been tampered with, and David's cell phone data showed he'd been in the area of the crash site just hours before it happened. "The defendant has a pattern," the prosecutor told the jury during closing arguments. "When David Crawford can't control a situation through money or manipulation, he eliminates the problem permanently." His wife Simone was next on that list. The defense team had tried every strategy available, claiming Simone was a gold digger seeking revenge, arguing that David's business activities were standard wealth management practices, suggesting that Vanessa Sterling had manipulated David into illegal activity. None of it stuck. The evidence was too overwhelming. The paper trail too clear. The witness testimony too consistent. On the 5th day of deliberation, the jury returned with guilty verdicts on all 17 federal charges. Money laundering, tax evasion, fraud, conspiracy, and most importantly, conspiracy to commit murder in the death of Sarah Crawford. Judge Martha Stevens sentenced David Crawford to 45 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. "Mr. Crawford," the judge said as David stood to receive his sentence, "you used your wealth and power to systematically destroy anyone who threatened your control. You planned to have your current wife institutionalized, planned to steal her child, and based on the evidence presented, planned to have her killed if those strategies failed. This court finds your actions to be among the most callous and calculated crimes I've seen in 30 years on the bench." As the bailiffs led David away in shackles, he turned to look at Simone one last time. There was no remorse in his expression, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Even now, facing life in prison, he looked at her with the cold indifference of someone who'd never seen her as fully human. Simone felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, no sadness. Just emptiness where her marriage used to be, and relief that it was finally over. Outside the courthouse, Patricia Barnes addressed the media while Simone and Destiny waited in a protective circle of FBI agents and family supporters. "Today's verdict sends a clear message that wealth and power cannot protect criminals who prey upon the most vulnerable members of our society," Patricia announced. David Crawford thought he could destroy a woman and steal her child simply because he had more money and more connections. He was wrong. Reporters shouted questions about Simone's plans, about the financial settlement, about how this experience had changed her. She ignored them all, focusing instead on Destiny's small hand in hers and the knowledge that they were finally, truly safe. The financial resolution had been swift and decisive. David's assets, estimated at $1.4 billion, were being distributed among his victims' families, government fines and restitution payments. Simone's share after legal fees and taxes would be approximately $200 million, more money than she'd ever dreamed of having. But more important than the money was the custody decision. Judge Stevens had terminated David's parental rights entirely, citing the evidence of his plans to use Destiny as a tool for manipulation and his potential danger to anyone who opposed him. Destiny Crawford will never be required to have any contact with her biological father, the judge had ruled. This court finds that David Crawford poses a continuing threat to both the child and her mother, and that termination of parental rights is necessary to protect them. As they left the courthouse that day, Simone felt like she was walking out of one life and into another. The woman who'd entered that building 4 months ago, trusting, naive, financially dependent, was gone forever. In her place was someone harder but wiser, scarred but unbroken. That evening at the celebration dinner Regina had organized at their favorite restaurant, Destiny made an announcement that surprised everyone. "I want to change my last name," she said seriously. "I don't want to be a Crawford anymore. I want to be a Washington like Grandma Regina." "Sweetheart," Simone said gently, "you don't have to make that decision right now. It's a big change. I already decided. Crawford was Daddy's name and he was bad. Washington is your real name and Grandma's name and our family's name." The simple logic was unassailable. 2 weeks later, Destiny Washington started 3rd grade at a new private school where no one knew her history, where she could be just another 8-year-old girl whose biggest worry was whether she'd remember to pack her lunch. On the first day of school, as Simone watched her daughter walk confidently into her new classroom, she thought about how much they'd both changed since that terrible afternoon when she'd come home from the hospital early. They were different people now. Stronger people. Free people. The nightmare was over. Their real life was about to begin. 1 year later, Simone Washington stood in the kitchen of her new house, a beautiful but modest 4-bedroom colonial in a quiet neighborhood where Destiny could ride her bike safely and where neighbors knew each other's names without needing to check security camera footage. She was making pancakes on a Saturday morning, something she'd never had time for during her marriage to David, when her phone rang. Jamal's name appeared on the screen and she smiled before answering. "Good morning," she said, flipping a pancake with one hand while holding the phone with the other. "Good morning, beautiful. How's my favorite architect's client doing today?" "Your client is doing very well, thank you." Although she's wondering if her architect has any plans to stop by and inspect his work today. "Funny you should mention that. I happen to be in the neighborhood with coffee and donuts from that place Destiny loves." Through the window, Simone could see Jamal's truck pulling into the driveway, and her heart did the little skip it had been doing for months whenever she saw him. Their relationship had developed slowly, carefully, with the deliberation of 2 adults who understood that trust was something precious that shouldn't be rushed. He'd been there through the trial, sitting in the back of the courtroom on the hardest days, never pushing for more than she was ready to give. He'd helped her house hunt when she decided to leave the Potomac mansion and all its memories behind. He designed the playroom where Destiny now hosted sleepovers with friends who knew nothing about billionaire fathers or federal trials. Most importantly, he'd shown Destiny what a good man looked like. Someone who kept promises, who treated women with respect, who solved problems with conversation rather than manipulation or threats. "Jamal's here." Destiny called, racing down the stairs in her pajamas to unlock the front door. She'd started calling him by his first name 6 months ago, after he'd asked her permission to date her mother for real, with serious intentions. "Morning, sunshine," Jamal said, lifting Destiny in a hug that made her giggle. "I brought those chocolate donuts you like." "The ones with sprinkles?" "The ones with sprinkles." As they settled around the kitchen table, a comfortable lived-in table that bore the scars of homework sessions and art projects, Simone felt the deep contentment that had taken months to develop. This wasn't the desperate happiness of someone trying to forget trauma. It was the steady joy of someone who'd built a real life on solid foundations. "Mama," Destiny said, her mouth full of donut, "can I tell you something?" "Always, baby girl." "I'm glad Daddy went to prison." The statement was delivered with the matter-of-fact tone that 8-year-olds used for observations about weather or school lunch preferences. Simone and Jamal exchanged glances over her head. "Why's that, sweetheart?" "Because if he hadn't gone to prison, we wouldn't have this house and I wouldn't have my new school, and you wouldn't have met Jamal again and Grandma Regina wouldn't live down the street." Destiny ticked off the reasons on her fingers. "Also, I wouldn't have gotten to see him cry when the judge said he was bad." Simone had thought Destiny was too young to fully understand David's sentencing hearing, but clearly she'd absorbed more than anyone realized. "Do you miss him at all?" Jamal asked gently. Destiny considered this seriously. "I miss the daddy I thought he was. But that daddy wasn't real. He was just pretending. I don't miss the real daddy because the real daddy was scary. The conversation was interrupted by a knock at the front door. Simone opened it to find Mrs. Evelyn holding a covered dish and wearing the broad smile that meant she had gossip to share. "Child, I brought you some of my famous cornbread and I have news," the older woman announced, making herself at home at the kitchen table. "That fancy house where you used to live? The bank finally sold it." Oh. Simone wasn't sure she wanted to know who'd bought the place where her marriage had died. Bought by a nice family from Atlanta. The wife is a doctor, husband teaches at Georgetown. They have 3 children and 2 dogs. Mrs. Evelyn accepted a cup of coffee from Jamal with the ease of someone who'd appointed herself honorary grandmother to their household. They asked the neighbors about the history, about what happened there. "What did you tell them?" "I told them that house needed a family that would fill it with love instead of secrets. I told them that good people could change the energy of a place, make it clean again." It was exactly what Mrs. Evelyn would say, practical wisdom wrapped in kindness. Simone felt a weight lift that she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. The house where David had planned her destruction would become a home where children played safely and parents loved each other honestly. After Mrs. Evelyn left with promises to babysit any time they needed her, Simone found herself alone in the kitchen with Jamal while Destiny watched cartoons in the living room. "I have something to tell you," Jamal said, his expression suddenly serious. Simone's chest tightened. After David, serious conversations still triggered her anxiety response. "What is it?" "I love you," he said simply. "I love you and I love Destiny and I love the life we're building together. And I want to ask you something important, but I want to make sure you're ready to hear it." "What kind of question?" "The kind that involves jewelry and knee-bending and promises about the future." Simone's heart stopped, then started again at double speed. "Jamal? I'm not asking today," he said quickly. "I'm just letting you know that I'm thinking about asking. Someday soon. When you're ready. If you're ever ready." She looked at this man who'd waited patiently while she rebuilt herself from the ground up, who'd never once pushed her to move faster than she was comfortable with, who'd shown her what love looked like when it was offered freely instead of used as a weapon. "I might be ready sooner than you think," she said softly. Yeah. Later that evening, after Jamal had gone home and Destiny was asleep, Simone sat in her study, a small room lined with books and plants where she'd been writing her memoir about surviving financial abuse and recovering from betrayal. The book would be published next year, with proceeds going to help other women escape dangerous marriages. She looked at the framed photo on her desk, herself, Destiny, and Regina on the courthouse steps after David's sentencing, all 3 of them smiling with the exhausted relief of people who'd survived a war. They looked tired but victorious, scarred but unbroken. Her phone buzzed with a text from Patricia Barnes. "Saw the news about David's appeal being denied. How are you feeling?" Simone typed back, "Free." It was true. David Crawford would spend the rest of his life in federal prison, which meant she would spend the rest of her life knowing that he could never again threaten her or Destiny or anyone else who dared to stand in his way. She was free to love without fear, to trust without constantly watching for betrayal, to build a future based on hope instead of survival. As she turned off the lights and headed upstairs to check on Destiny one last time before bed, Simone thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, terrified, isolated, financially dependent, believing her husband's lies about her own capabilities. That woman was gone, replaced by someone who'd discovered her own strength in the crucible of betrayal. Someone who'd learned that the love of good people was worth more than all the money in the world. Someone who'd found that sometimes the worst thing that could happen to you was also the thing that set you free. In her daughter's bedroom, Destiny slept peacefully, surrounded by the security of knowing she was loved unconditionally and protected absolutely. On her nightstand was a photo of herself with Simone and Jamal at the zoo last weekend, all 3 of them laughing at something the sea lions had done. It was the face of a child who'd learned to trust again, who'd seen that not all powerful men were dangerous, who'd discovered that families could be broken and rebuilt stronger than before. Simone kissed her daughter's forehead and whispered the same promise she made every night. "You are safe, you are loved, and tomorrow will be better than today." As she stood in the doorway looking at her sleeping child, Simone realized that everything David had tried to take from them, their security, their future, their happiness, had grown back stronger and more beautiful than before. He tried to destroy them. Instead, he'd set them free to become everything they were meant to be. The nightmare was over. The dream was just beginning. And for the first time in years, Simone Washington fell asleep without fear, knowing that tomorrow would bring nothing but possibilities.